So welcome everyone to the ZPNC stream. In this session, we have got Frank Kine and Mario Betsy from Watson and Walker. They'll be talking about the ZedRoadShow. So I'm very excited to hear about that. As always, we ask for your feedback towards the end of the presentation. This session is 6AW, and I'll leave a link in the chat box so you can leave that towards the end. And we'd also appreciate any donations, big or small, to our nominated charities of the year. And I'll also leave a link for that in the description as well. In terms of Q&A, we will be taking questions in at the end, but obviously feel free to ask away during the presentation, and either Mario or Frank will get to them towards the end of the presentation. So with that in mind, over to you, Mario.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Mario Betsy, work with Frank for Cheryl Watson. I joined the organization reminding you to consider donating to the charities you see in this chart. Please do it. Who are we? Watson & Walker is a small company founded in 1988 by Cheryl Watson and her husband, Tom. They published the Cheryl Watson tuning letter since 1991, so it is in its 30th year of publication. And in addition to this quite popular publication, we also provide consulting to customers around the world on performance, capacity, sysplex, high availability, and lately on software pricing optimization. I'm presenting the first half of this session, and I hope to leave enough time to Frank for the excellent material and topics he wants to present. I do have just 3 topics: a quick introduction to ZOS language environment, and I will tell you why. A topic about a new piece of technology IBM is introducing around SMF. It is called SMF Pi. And I have a reminder, a small section about a couple of free tools Watson & Walker make available to the ZOS community. So let me start with my first half, a very, very, very quick introduction to language environment. So language environment is not new technology. It has been around for a long time. Still, at least from our experience, is a not very known part of the operating system. And this is because it is in between application programming and infrastructure management. It is actually managed by the infrastructure team, but most of the LE options are dictated by applications. So most system programmers don't feel comfortable touching LE, and this means that over time, LE knowledge in the infrastructure team tends to go by. So very few charts introducing what LE does for ZOS and for the applications, and which are the most interesting runtime options you can check and tune in your environment to make sure to properly manage your applications. So language environment is a common runtime library, a set of runtime services provided by the operating system to compilers. So compilers can rely on the availability of this set of runtime services. And these runtime services are language agnostic, which means that any language can use them. And actually, I would say all the available ZOS compilers exploit language environment, which means that they all use the same model for storage management, program management, error management, and so on. And this is very important because using the same model and using the same services allow these languages to intercommunicate. So language environment is the basis for interlanguage communication in ZOS. It makes it possible to invoke a PL1 function from COBOL or vice versa, or C or whatever. LE is implemented by Fortran, PL1, COBOL, C, and even by the more modern languages. Java relies on language environment. ZOS has portings for Node.js, Python, Go, and so on. All of them use language environment. And you can also use language environment in assembler if you wish. It is not required, but it is handy as language environment provides an opaque interface to operating system services, which means that you can rely on a stable interface to require operating system services. And actually, LE, I would say almost the same code base is available for other operating systems than ZOS. And this is because this allows to reuse the technology, the compiler technology for ZVSC and so on. So it is very interesting, a very interesting component, and very important to applications which exploit it. Generally, a language environment is initialized for each new main program. So whenever a new main program starts, a fresh language environment is created. And the way the language environment works depends on the runtime options you define. So you have a large number, actually, of language and environment runtime options you can specify to determine how language environment behaves. They are defined via CE PRM parmlib member or via the set CE command. You can provide a DD name in your JCL to override those. So there are several ways of defining LE runtime options. And I said that there are many options. I would like to focus on a couple, actually one area. There are three major areas of customization for language environment, at least in my opinion. One is about error handling, how errors are managed if a dump is collected, and so on. One is about addressing mode management for applications intermixing different addressing modes. And of course, if you use multiple addressing modes in the same application, language environment has to support this, and supporting multiple addressing modes means addressing mode switch, which is additional overhead for addressing for language environment. So if you are running mostly addressing mode 31 applications, the default value for the relevant language environment option, all 31, should be on, which is the default. And by exception, you should specify which applications require intermixing a mode 31 and a mode 24. But the most important area of customization for language environment is storage management. And this is especially from a performance standpoint. I told you that LE provides management models for programs and storage. Normally, an application program runs under a language environment thread, this has nothing to do with DB2 threads. This is the LE representation of a running program, and within a thread execution is serial. So within a thread, there is always only a single program executing. One or more language environment threads are associated to an enclave. The enclave is the object which owns resources. So if you load a program, this program is available to all threads running under the same enclave. If you allocate storage, this storage is available to all the threads running under the same enclave. Multi-threading is supported by language environment, multi-threading under the same enclave, but it is not common in the ZOS environment, especially for legacy applications. COBOL does not provide native support for multi-threading. PL1 and C do, but they require running in POSIX mode, and POSIX is not supported under KICS, for example. So multi-threading is not common, but there are new applications being ported to ZOS, especially C applications which exploit multi-threading, and I will give you an example later on. Storage management is our focus today. LE manages two types of storage. IPs. IPs are used for variables explicitly defined or COBOL working storage. Memory you get in C using the malloc function or the PL1 allocate function. So this is a quite large part of the memory used by a program. Then there is the stack. The stack is used for save areas, for COBOL local storage, for C and PL1 automatic variables, which are created when a program starts and destroyed when the program ends, while the IP storage survives to the execution of the program which allocated them. From a performance standpoint, initial storage, IPs and stacks are carved out from a single piece of storage, which is obtained with a single get main when LE initializes, and you may want to satisfy all the memory requests for the application programs running under an application from the initial storage, because extending the IP or extending the stack means executing additional get mains, which has a cost. Important runtime options in the storage area. The IP option specifies the initial and the incremental size of the IP. And as I said, you may want to specify a large enough initial IP size to make sure that all the memory requests for the application are satisfied by the initial IP. And to define the proper size for the IP, you can rely on the information provided by the storage report, a language environment storage report, which is created if you specify the RPT STG runtime option. Another important option for storage management is the storage option, which specifies if you want to initialize memory that LE allocates, when it is allocated and when it is freed. So this is quite expensive, especially if specified at the system or region level. If your programs, application programs, are properly written, variables should be initialized by the application program, so you should not need to use the storage option. The third important runtime option I want to cover is the ePools 64 option. So I told you that there is the EP, which is used for memory explicitly allocated by the program, and the EP management algorithm, the original EP management algorithm, was designed for single-threaded applications because multi-threading was not common under ZOS. Nowadays, there are several new multi-threaded applications running under ZOS, and when they try to acquire memory from the EP, they experience contention. So language environment now provides an alternative algorithm for EP management, especially designed for multi-threaded applications. And this is the ePools 64 option. ePools management is disabled by default. So you have to enable it yourself, and it makes sense to do it. And I will give you a major example of why you want to consider enabling it. The TCP/IP application transparent TLS. So it is encryption performed at the network stack level, and it is performed automatically by TCP/IP based on policies you provide. ATTLS exploits a ZOS component called System SSL, and both ATTLS and System SSL are language environment enabled applications written in C, and they make heavy use of multi-threading to support encryption parallelism. So if you are using ATTLS in your environment, you may see that enabling ePools, especially ePools 64, can significantly improve your network latency. And I've got a link to a Kickspace which explains what to do to enable ePools 64 for Kicks. I told you about the RPT storage option, which gives you information about the recommended sites for EAPs and pools and the EAPs and stacks. You don't want to use this option in production because, sorry. You don't want to use this in production because LE requires additional activity to collect this kind of information in your environment. So it should the RPT storage option should only be used in development environments to identify the memory requirements for applications. The last interesting piece of information about language environment is something new that IBM is introducing, the ability to run programs written in addressing mode 31 and addressing mode 64 under the same unit of work enclave. This was not possible before, and this is especially interesting for Java because currently, if you want to run COBOL and Java together under the same unit of work, you are forced to use the 31-bit Java virtual machine, which puts limits in the number of classes you can load, amount of memory you can provide to Java applications, and so on. With this new function introduced by language environment and exploited by COBOL and Java, it is now possible to have an addressing mode 64 Java virtual machine calling a COBOL program written in a mode 31 and having them under the same unit of work execution environment, and vice versa. You can have an addressing mode 31 COBOL program invoking a Java class running under a 64-bit addressing Java virtual machine. This is available. This has been announced with ZOS 2.5, but the enabling A-parts are also available for ZOS 2.3 and 2.4. SMFPy, IBM just published again in the ZOS 2.5 announcement a statement of direction about a new capability to help client analyze SMF data using modern techniques. And because of our interest in SMF, IBM was kind enough to invite us to the introduction program. What's behind this? Why is IBM doing this? So IT infrastructures are more and more complex. There is a large amount of data about infrastructures that should be processed quickly to spot issues and to identify saving opportunities. But especially in the ZOS environment, tuning and problem determination skills are in shortage, while at the same time, we see new professions in the data analysis discipline. So there is people out there able to analyze data using statistics and pattern recognition. So having the opportunity to use IT operational data in the data analysis environment allows to simplify the process of debugging issues and performing performance analysis. So the SMFPy statement of direction, and I highlighted the important parts. IBM intends to deliver a SMF data access toolkit that can help clients accessing SMF data in an easy and modern way to enable data science solutions, and which enables processing SMF without needing unique ZOS skills. So these are the key messages. So SMFPy is a way to access SMF data using Python. Why Python? Python is one of the most popular languages in the distributed environments. There are some 8 million Python programmers over there, and Python is also available on ZOS currently. So you can have Python running everywhere. Python, it is known as batteries included because it provides a very large set of libraries which provide whatever function you may imagine. And especially in the data science area, Python provides a large amount of available functions. We will focus on one of these, which is Jupyter Notebooks. Jupyter Notebooks are documents which may include text, live code, Python code or whatever, and graphics and so on. So you can create a notebook which describes a problem, provides the code to solve the problem, and shows the result of the solution, like in this slide I'm showing you. So SMFPy uses Python and to allow processing SMF data in a modern way. It provides a library, a Python library to access SMF data, and provides a set of Jupyter Notebook tutorials to show how Python can be used to process SMF data. And this allows non-ZOS skilled people to access and process data. So it allows to put the SMF data flow into the normal data analysis process, statistical data analysis, pattern recognition analysis, which data scientists are able to do for whatever kind of metrics. There are several tools, products playing in the same area as SMFPy. Most of them are part or complete turnkey solutions. SMFPy is not like this. SMFPy is just a toolkit which allows you to use modern technology to access SMF, but with SMFPy, it is up to you to leverage Python and Jupyter Notebooks to build analytic assets which address your specific needs. And this is an example of what you can do with SMFPy. This is a Jupyter Notebook. There is a piece of code, a piece of Python code, and there is the result in graphical format. And if you look at the code, there are 4 imports, including external libraries, and there are 4 actual statements. One of them connect you with the dataset containing SMF data. One of them creates a data frame, a pandas data frame with the SMF data. The third statement creates the graphic, and the fourth statement displays it. So very easy, and there is nothing ZOS specific in this. Any Python programmer can do it without knowing that ZOS is behind this. So SMFPy is new. It is an interesting statement of direction from IBM. As far as we can see, it is a toolkit, not a packaged solution, but it can make it easy for non-mainframe people to apply data science to SMF data. And this is, smart. We are sponsored users for SMFPy, so we will keep working on it, and we will let you know how it goes. Couple of slides about 2 free tools we make available to customers if you are not aware of them. One is the important message health check. So it is an health checker check which allows you to trap important messages. We provide a list of messages we consider important, and you can add your own or you remove those you don't think are important. We plan to periodically update this list, and so far more than 200 users downloaded it. We do have important messages for ZOS, and thanks to Adrian Burke, we also have a list of important DB2 messages we trap, and I'll show you an example of what happens if you enable the important message check. If you enable the important message check and one of the messages we consider important is issued, we trap it, and we generate a HZS0001 message informing that the check found an exception, and you can automate it. And in addition, if you look at the output of the important message check, you get an explanation of what happened, and you also get the list of important messages we trapped. So the important message check is also a single source for important messages without the need of scanning a long syslog or overlog to retrieve them. The other free tool I want to mention is our www.unters utility for distributed systems. It allows you to uncompress ZOS TERS files, and we support both fixed and variable record formats. And this allows you, for example, to unters SMF data on distributed and consume it on distributed. www.unters is available for Windows and Linux, and it is quite popular. We announced it in March this year, I believe, and more than 150 customers downloaded it. It is a command line interface tool. You can get an help of how it works. And if you run it, you see that in this example, it took me 2 minutes to unters 8 gigabytes of SMF data with my little PC. So a very efficient way of processing TERS files outside ZOS. Where to get our free tools? This is a link to the Watson and Walker webpage from where you can get them. And I think this is all I wanted to share, and I will hand over to Frank for the second part, and I will take questions after Frank.
Okay, Mario, if you want to stop sharing your screen, and then Frank can start sharing his.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, brilliant. We can't hear you at the moment, Frank. I think you're on mute. Let me just try and unmute on my end. 1 second.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and clear.
No, thanks for your help. So I was trying to unmute there, and it said that the host wasn't permitting people to unmute themselves. So good afternoon, everybody from sunny Ireland, believe it or not. I'd like to thank Mario for his excellent material, as always. And he even stuck to half the time. We normally present, most of our sessions are conference sessions, we sort of take turns, so Mario and myself, or Cheryl and myself, or Cheryl and Mario. And we have a tradition for whoever goes first, their half takes about 3/4 of the time. So one time I was presenting a share, and one of the regular attendees, myself and Cheryl, one of the regular attendees came up to me at the beginning of the session, and he said, "Who's going first today?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "Oh." So obviously he was looking forward to hearing more from Cheryl than from me. So anyway, I'll get stuck into it. I think I should be okay for time. I have some small topics, a number of small topics instead of the large ones that Mario had. So let's get moving and see how we get on. Okay. And so, whoops, go back one. Okay, so the first one, you might have noticed it. Part of 2.5, they've split RMF into two separate features. So there's a new one called the Advanced Data Gatherer, which is basically the half of RMF that does all the data collection, okay, and creates the SMF records. And then the other half that is still called RMF is basically the reporting part of the traditional RMF, and that's then managed by Rocket Software. So what does this mean to you? If you're an existing RMF customer and you're licensed for RMF, it really shouldn't mean anything from a financial point of view. If you continue to license RMF, you get entitlement to use the automatic or the Advanced Data Gatherer. If you, for some strange reason, want to have just the SMF records but not the reporting, then you could license just Advanced Data Gatherer and not the RMF part of it. But if you have RMF, you continue to get it all. There are some small changes because they've split the code in two. So as well as the SERB data sets, you have a new set of data sets called SGRB, which will have the Advanced Data Gatherer parts in there. Also, if you're looking at the manuals, you know that there's two bookshelves now. There's the ZOS RMF one, and there's a new one called the ZOS Data Gatherer. Okay, so these are sort of external changes. One thing, as I was looking at this first, the more I dug into it, the more I was saying, oh, you mean there are parts of RMF that are really have a foot in both camps, if you like. So look at RMF Monitor 3, for example. So it gathers information, but it also presents information to you. And I was trying to figure out, you know, which function would live in one or other of the products. So Peter Munk had a session at the last share, and it really did an excellent job of explaining what ended up where after the split. At the moment, I checked with him this morning. At the moment, that presentation is only available on the share website, and it's only available to people that attended share. Actually, while I think of it, in future, it used to be the case that you could always download the share presentation material from the website, whether you attended share or not, or even if you're a share member or not. They're changing that now, so you have to be a share member or work in a share member organization in order to be able to access the material. So it's going to be a little bit harder in future to either people, you know, pay up to be a member, or else you won't have access to that. So Peter said he's going to set up a new ZOS Data Gatherer directory on the ZOS GitHub repository. So I have the link there. It's not set up yet. The material isn't available yet, but I'm sure it will be soon on Peter. In Marna's session, technical actions for their upgrades, so that's 7AP. She also has information in there about the IFA, PRD, and link list considerations for the split. And if you're a Tuning Letter subscriber, we have more information. We did an article back in this #2 issue of what the restructure means for you. And we have I think it's a nice, helpful little matrix in there that shows all of the various functionality that's in different parts of RMF and where they've ended up after the split. Next one, again, this was a statement of direction as part of ZOS 2 or ZOS. Sorry, I'm in Europe now. I should say ZOS 2.4, saying that as of 2.5, WLM will no longer let you override the service definition coefficients. Now, surprisingly, the default values for those have been like that since forever. They're CPU 10, SRB 10, IOC 5, and MSO 0. So that the new values in 2.5 are going to be CPU and SRB will both be set to 1, and IOC and MSO will be set to 0. Now, the actual recommended values from IBM, particularly if you follow the Washington Systems Center, have been nearly the same as the new ones. So they've been CPU 1, SRB 1, IOC 0.5, and MSO 0. So that's very close to the current recommendations. And actually last year, I think it was, the Washington Systems Center changed their recommendations to match exactly what the new ones are. So if you've been following those recommendations, you should be good to go. And I'd like to stress, if you do that in all of your sysplexes, because we've multiple times we've seen people with different sysplexes and they have different service definition coefficient values. So be careful. just make sure that you check that in all of your plexes. To help you do that, IBM shipped an APAR last year. It's migration health check, and it will check to see if your current STC values are different than the ones that are going to be in 2.5. So make sure you run that health check. Okay. Now, why do we bring this up now? Because there are a lot of people saying, well, yeah, I'm busy. I'm not going to do 2.5. Maybe I'll wait till 2.6 or whatever. Well, it's really important that you address this beforehand if it needs to be addressed. And the reason is that the first time you IPL a 2.5 or whatever 2.6 system into your Sysplex, every system in the Plex will automatically switch to those new values at that time. So this isn't the sort of thing that you can say, oh, I'll do that X years out in the future when I have a quiet day. You really need to be thinking about this now and have any changes that you need to make complete before you move to whatever you're going to move to after 2.4. Okay, and that the places that you're likely to be affected are if you have multi-period WLAN service classes, which I think everybody does. The duration of each period is specified in terms of weighted service units, so that the weighted part means that they've applied these service definition coefficients. Okay, the WLAN resource group definitions, they talk about service units, but they're unweighted service units, so you don't have to worry about changing those. And equally, the ERV parameter in IEA opt, that also talks about service units, but that's also unweighted, so there'll be no change there either. Where you probably, if you're fortunate or unfortunate enough to do chargeback, this is probably where you're going to see the biggest impact, because most chargeback processes use the weighted service units. So you have to bear that in mind. I have a list of SMF records there. The reason I provided that is that as I went through the SMF manual, there are lots of places where it talks about service units, just with those two words. But in some cases, they're actually referring to MSUs, like in the Type 70 SMF records, which are used for software charging. And MSUs are different to service units. An MSU today is not 1 million service units. I tried to split out there the ones where if you see the word service unit, when it means a weighted service unit, and the other case where it means an MSU. There's a presentation on this topic that Andreas Hennig from Bodlingen did last year, chair, earlier this year, chair. At the moment, that doesn't seem to be available anywhere. I have a copy of it. I know Andreas is very happy for us to pass it out. So if anybody would like a copy of that, let me know. In the meantime, I'm working with them to see if we can get that put up on some IBM websites so people can access it there. Because again, of the fact that it's not so easy to get at share material anymore. Okay, and also we have a tuning letter article on the same topic, again in issue number 2 for this year. Next topic, DB2 and the Z15 sort accelerator. I'm going to focus more so on the DB2 aspect here. So this has sort of one slide to introduce the sort accelerator. And then I think it's 2 or 3 slides on the DB2 aspects. So this sort accelerator is announced as part of Z15. In performance benchmarks that IBM have been showing, the results are very impressive. In the cases where you have a suitable sort, they see CPU and elapsed time savings of up to 40%. Okay, so in the right case, it can be very effective. Unfortunately, there were a number of hypers in its youth, a bit like myself, which has delayed a lot of customers from rolling it out. It hasn't been made easier by, depending on who you speak to in IBM, you get a different answer about whether you should go ahead or not. Okay, so the result has been a lot of people have been sort of sitting on the sidelines waiting for the dust to settle. Now, there are a few things that hopefully will help with that. One is that IBM set up a fixed cache called IBM.function.zsort. At the moment, unfortunately, it isn't actually assigned to any APARs, and that's an error. So we're working with them to see if we can get that fixed. So hopefully that will give you good, reliable information in the future. In the absence of that, I have a list of all the hyper DF sort APARs on the page there. The 2 that have asterisks, at the moment, they're not flagged as being hyper, but they are actually hyper APARs. So that, again, IBM are working to get that fixed at the moment. But all of them have PTFs available for them. there aren't any, to my knowledge, open, hyper, or data integrity related DF-sort APARs. That there are some open ones, but not related to data integrity. So that's just a little bit of background. The other thing I just want to point out is that maybe because my initial work on this was all sort of from a DSR perspective, but this really is it's a Z15 Z15 capability. Uses this new sort-L instruction, and yes, it's used by DF-sort. It's also used by DB2, by DB2 tools, by SyncSort. If you wanted to, you could write your own program to use it. So I should do a better job of in my own head differentiating between the DF-sort implementation of it and the underlying capability. Okay. Coming to DB2, so there are two aspects of this from a DB2 perspective. One is DB2's own use. So if you do a select blah blah and you say order by date of birth or whatever, internally there's a component of DB2 called the Relational Data Services, RDS, and in APAR PH31684 they added I'd say intelligence into DB2, so it knows about this new capability, and also the DB2 folks ran their own performance measurements and said, well, here are the cases where this does well, and here are the cases where it doesn't do so well. So there's actually logic inside DB2 that it's not just going to call the sort accelerator every time it has to do a sort. We'll only call it in what they deem to be appropriate cases, which means that as they take more measurements and potentially as the hardware capability changes, that the situations where they do or don't call it might change. So it's important to, as I say here, keep an eye out for new APARs. The other thing to bear in mind is that if you're, for some reason, are dead set against using this, officially, there's no way that you can turn it off. If DB2 says I'm running on a Z15, and this query that I have here would be ideal for the sort accelerator, in theory, you can't stop it from using it. But there's two things. One is that there are some DB2 IFSIDs that will actually report on its use. So you can actually tell, is it really being used or not by DB2? And if it is, and if you're still, presumably it's working okay, but if you still want to turn it off, there's a hidden ZPARM. If you look in, excuse me, in this APAR, PH36930, and in there it shows you a way to turn it off. Okay. Just to point out, there's a PARMLib member called ICE-PRM that lets you turn off DF-sort use of this Z-sort capability at the system level, but that's only specifically for DF-sort. And DB2 in this situation is not using DF-sort, he's using his own code. So you can set that to anything you like. That will make no difference to DB2 from this perspective. Okay, come on. The PC's giving me a hard time today. The other side of this is use of the sort accelerator by DB2 utilities. So IBM shipped an APAR. It's a DB2 APAR, so it's not a utilities APAR, it's DB2 APAR 28183. And that added a new ZPARM. And in that ZPARM, the idea is that you can say whether or not you want to use the Z-sort capability. Okay. So there are two cases at the moment. One is if your utility is using DF-sort. Okay. So in that case, the utility will say, oh, okay, they've told me, the customer knows, oh, the customer said I should use Z-sort, the sort accelerator. I'm going to do a call to DF-sort saying that I'd like to use the sort accelerator, and then DF-sort will use its own logic to decide whether this actually makes sense in this case or not. And currently that's only used for reorg. I think probably that will change in the foreseeable future. The other case is if you're using a product called IBM DF-sort for ZOS, and that's basically they use a SyncSort under the covers. Okay, so that support wasn't working. The IBM shipped an APAR 35059 that turns it off. So even if you say in your ZPARMs, yes, I want to use this, that APAR is going to say, no, you're not, and it's going to turn it off. Okay, so presumably there will be a follow-up to that APAR when they're happy that they want to turn it on again. Okay, and there's a fixed cat that you can track for use on that front. Now, what makes this interesting is I was listening to a webcast recently from Precisely. This is the the company that bought SyncSort. And on there, they were saying that that SyncSort support for Sort Accelerator will be available very soon. But they didn't say what's very soon, and I haven't been able to find any mention of it since then. So I don't know, when that's going to be released. If you're a SyncSort customer, I certainly would speak to them and see what their plans are. The other interesting thing is that on that call, they gave the impression, and maybe I misunderstood, but they seem to be saying that this DB2 sort for ZWest capability was working, but that IBM APAR, the PH35059, is going to turn it off. So again, you probably would want to have a word with the Precisely folks and figure out exactly where that stands at the moment. And it's something being done to override that APAR, because as long as that APAR is there, I would imagine it's not going to call Sort Accelerator. Okay. Next one. Let me fix for time. Okay, 9 minutes. This one, I think is very interesting. Steve Warren mentioned it briefly in the session with Maren. I hope you go into it in more detail on the Sysplex update. I haven't had a chance to check that one. But basically, it's possible for a coupling facility to be bombarded with so many requests for a single structure that you get all of this queuing and match contention building up in the coupling facility, and basically it impacts anybody that's using that CF. Obviously, especially the case if you only have a single engine, as many people do. But even if you have multiple engines in the CF, you can still get this. So this picture here is showing the response time for a bunch of structures in one coupling facility when this one structure was really dominating the CF CPU time. And you can see that the response time at the beginning down here, it's around about 20 mics. Then it goes up as far as 1,000 microseconds in this interval when the CF was being bombarded with all of these requests. And nearly all of the structures had horrible response time. The best of them here was around 250 mics up to 1,000 mics. So that's not a really great situation. So to address that, IBM brought out this monopolization avoidance function. It's rolled back to 2.2 and 2.4 by that APAR. It's built into 2.5. It also requires a Z15. Okay, so CF level 24. And you can turn it on or off with this ZXCF functions command, the parameters CF monovoid. It's turned off by default in 2.4 in the previous releases, but it's turned on by default in 2.5. And the reason I'm talking about any of this is because we have had some experiences where it's been very valuable, and we're now recommending people that have an earlier release like 2.4 should go and turn it on. I haven't seen anywhere that it has hurt people, but I have seen cases where it has helped. Okay, so that this basically is the same interval, same workload, okay, after this monopolization avoidance has been turned on. So you can see that now there's one structure, with bad response times, but everybody else basically was untouched. And even this bad one, I think it was running around 620, 630 mics versus 1,000 microseconds before. And so that this is, if you have very busy coupling facilities, very busy structures, this is a good thing. Okay. Two things to point out. One is in Steve's presentation, I believe he has some message numbers in there that get produced when this thing kicks into action. And also the messages tell you how many messages have been delayed. So, if the message delayed is 5, who really cares that much? If it's, 50 million that have been delayed, then that's the sort of thing that probably you would want to alert somebody. Okay. The other thing is that in the change value in the RMF coupling facility in the structure level report, the change value, as well as representing no subchannels, it now also includes the number of times that monopolization avoidance kicked in. Okay, this machine alert came out back in September. It's for a coupling facility control code bug related to DB2 group buffer pool structures. It's if there's one example here where we had a client and they had a very high CF utilization with one of the group buffer pools being identified by RMF as using most of the CPU time. So we dug a little bit deeper and we said, well, let's have a look at the CF CPU time per request and see, how does that change over time of day? And then sure enough, the times when they had very high levels of activity against that structure, the CF CPU time per request was up to 6 times higher than in a normal interval. So I'm not talking about MBS CPU time here, we're talking about coupling stability CPU time. You get that out of the 74.4 records, okay? So we highly recommend that if you have, big sysplex, so you have busy root buffer pool structures, that you install either bundle 48 or 49A before your end change freeze kicks in. Just briefly, this is an interesting one. While looking at that, now that I have my new toy to play with, my new metric of CPU time per request, I was poking around and I found this MQ structure that normally was in the region of sort of 4 to 5 mics per request. But there were these intervals during the day where it would hop up to 60 or 65 or 70 mics. So obviously there was some application, some workload that was coming in intermittently and really driving up the MQ CPU time. So if that was my sysplex, I'd spend a little bit of time to try to figure out what's going on at those times, talk to the developers and see, is there a more CPU efficient manner to achieve what they're doing? Okay. This one, I'm really short on time, just briefly. We've had a lot of cases recently where we see with people with user catalogs in large numbers of extents, and they probably have been there, since I was young, since forever, and it largely goes unnoticed. And the problem is that oftentimes people set up a catalog with a large initial extent and maybe very small secondaries. So you could run for years before the initial extent fills, and then suddenly, it overflows, and now you have these, 10-track secondaries filling up very quickly. And trying to reorg a user catalog sometimes can be very disruptive. So we're just, calling people's attention to this just to keep an eye on it. Okay, a few things. CP enable. When IBM brought out the Z15, they changed the recommendation to be 5,15, and they also rolled that recommendation back to Z14. So when the Z14 came out, as far as I remember, it was 1030. When the Z15 came out, the Z15 had the new setting, but they also rolled it back to 14. So if you have a Z14, check your CP enable, make sure it's set to 5,15. And then there were 2 recommendations for XCF, only in 2.4. One is that you apply this hyper APAR, okay, and the other is that you keep your max message value to be not larger than 6,000. If you're interested in that, send me an email. I'm happy. I'll bore you to tears talking about that. And last thing here is remember COBOL goes out of service at the end of next April. COBOL version 4. This is touching on what Mario was speaking about. But there's a discussion earlier this year about software drag racing out on IBM main. And I'm back and forth, and people were talking about the speed or the efficiency of various programming languages, and everybody was assuming, all the traditional languages would be much better than the new ones like Java. But it turns out that they've been making so many improvements to Java that isn't the case. There's a very interesting paper by Andrew Rowley from Black Hill Software out on their website that talks about that. So if you're interested, I'd have a look at that, particularly if you're running on a subcap CP, like a 4 series, 5 or 6 series. The reason it's interesting is because even if Java isn't faster, well, if I can take some of my CPU intensive code, old COBOL code, put that over into Java, it can now run on a zip. So the zips are somewhere between 1.5, let's say, and 7 times faster than a general purpose CP. So even if my Java code isn't as efficient as my old COBOL code, it probably will still run in less time because of the higher speed on the zip, and that CPU time doesn't count towards your software build. So I think that's interesting. And then you marry that together with what Mario was telling you about this new interoperability between COBOL and Java. So I don't know. Everybody's mad keen these days to reduce their software builds and MSUs and so forth. So if I was in an environment like that, this is one of the things I would be thinking about. One thing just to point out, and this paper here, as far as I know, it points at FixPack 35 to deliver this service, but that either has gone or it's about to go PE. So IBM are recommending that you go to FixPack 36 instead, and that's the APAR number for that. Okay, if you want a mapping of all the Java service and FixPack levels to APAR numbers, this page here gives you that information. And I think this is nearly my last slide. And this is just to let you know, Java 11 finally shipped for ZOS. IBM announced, well, it'll ship next week, November 19th. It's been called Semaru. No comment. I have no idea why people can't just call it Java. But anyway, so this is out of the announcement letter. That's a link to the announcement letter. You can download 11 when it's available, and 8 and 7, all from this website here. It gives you downloads for ZOS and also for the other platforms. It's a very helpful website. ZOSMF, yeah, Cheryl has been a huge fan of this. I have to say, she's been so far ahead of the rest of us. When it came out first, I was saying, wow, this is a really expensive replacement for ISPF. Since then, it has, you know, matured tremendously in so many ways. It's really unrecognizable now from the original one. But what I really like about it, really like, to the extent we're going to do an article on it, is this new CFRM policy editor in ZOS or ZOS 2.5. If you haven't looked at that yet, let me know. I have some slides on it. I can send it to you. I think it's fantastic. It makes it so much easier to look after the CFRM policy. And they're also looking at enhancements in the future that will, you know, deliver even more function around this basic capability. So I would highly recommend that you have a look at that. And instead, if you're interested in playing with it, you know, give us a user perspective. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe work with us on that article. Finally, thanks everybody for all your patience, for sticking in there. This is our public website. You can send us an email at technical Watson Walker. The nice thing about a small company, our emails are all our first names, so Cheryl, Frank, Mario. There's a YouTube video that Cheryl did. So if you miss Cheryl's voice, watch your YouTube video of the application profile for Z. It's our new product. I think it's really cool. I'm not a sales guy. I couldn't sell water in the desert, but I just think this thing is you know, it really is a game changer. It gives perspective that nothing before that I'm aware of could do. Mary mentioned our free tools. We have a lot of previous presentations on our website and publication section. SMF reference summary, we'll update that as soon as we get a few spare minutes for ZOS 2.5. And if you have or are interested in any of those old orange books, if you remember the old orange Washington System Center books, we have some of them up on our website. We're always happy to get more people to have them in a machine readable format. Now, last thing, or nearly the last thing, okay? That this conference has all been free. I think it's fantastic. I think this is, you know, the folks who run it do, you know, the best job of any conference, particularly in the environment that we're in today. And they don't ask for anything for it. You know, they do a fantastic job, great speakers, really good topics. The only thing that they ask is, you know, take a tiny fraction of the money that you're not spending by not having to travel and stay in a hotel and eat big meals with champagne breakfast, and give that to somebody that is not as fortunate as you are. And look at the face on this guy. How could you say no to him? So please, you know, take a few minutes, you know, dig deep into your corporate credit card, and anything that you give, I'm sure will be both appreciated and needed. Become a member of GSE. I'm sure you've all seen this. There's two levels: there's company and individual. Individual also covers vendors and consultants. They show all the benefits there. Here's a link where you can get more information. You can send them an email if you'd like to join up or find out about joining up. And the last thing, if you give us your feedback, you know, if you liked it, didn't like it, if you'd say next time Mario's fantastic, but let Frank take the day off, that's fine. But please, you know, let us know what you liked and didn't like, and maybe we can try and make it better for next time. Thanks very much, everybody, for coming along, for giving us your afternoon. I hope you found it helpful. I certainly thought that Mario's information was really valuable. And please God, next year things will be a little bit closer to normal and we can actually meet up face to face again. Yeah, I think that's it. Chiara, is there any questions or abuse or?
No, it's certainly not any abuse. I think we don't have any questions, and the ones that we did, they've been answered by Mario and Cheryl Watson as well, who's actually tuned in.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. So thank you very much, Frank, for and Mario for the excellent presentation. Really appreciate it. I think you've pretty much covered everything that I was going to say around leaving feedback, donating to the nominated charity as well. We are, I think, at 70% of our target at the moment. So it'll be great to obviously hit 100% by the end of the conference. So just a reminder, if you did take any value from any of the presentations you've attended, we would greatly appreciate your donations. And yeah, thanks all for tuning in. We'll be back in here tomorrow at 9 a.m. GMT, where we will get to hear from Danilo. So yeah, so we'll be grateful for your support. Thanks very much for tuning in, and take care.
Thanks, Piero. Take care. Have a nice evening.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.